This by far, in a way, is like the easiest choice. This feels like almost like the Joe Burrow year where everyone knew he was going to win it.
FanBuzz Weekly starts now.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to FanBuzz Weekly. I'm your host, Patrick, with my co-hosts Tyler and Will, and we're breaking down the biggest stories and the hottest takes in college football. And man, are there a lot of hot takes right now as the season is winded down and we're getting into the CFP. Before we start, don't forget to follow us on social media and sign up for our newsletter. The links are in the description. Speaking of social media, if you haven't been on it, there's a lot of heat. There's a lot of discourse, and we've gotten a ton of comments from people reacting to the final CFP rankings, notably around Florida State and Alabama. So I'm going to start by dropping one of those comments in here because I feel like we need to talk about Florida State to start the show. This one is from nshane67. Says FSU will get smoked in the Orange Bowl by Georgia. But first, we need to sort of backtrack a little bit and maybe talk about whether Florida State was shafted or not. I'll let you guys get into it before I do because I have, biased ties here. So
we
Tyler or Will,
we
whichever,
all do, Patrick.
everyone's got to take. Everyone's got to take. I want to hear what you guys think. Did Florida State sort of deserve this ranking? What do you guys think?
Let me start by just saying that, yes, Florida State will get smoked by Georgia. Go Dogs. I think it's a real shame Georgia did not get into the playoff. Florida State fans absolutely deserve to be more upset than Bulldogs fans. I think it's kind of crazy that a team that won 29 straight games and back-to-back national titles did not get in. But this is not about my Georgia Bulldogs. This is about Florida State. I think it's a crime to the sport that a 13-0 Power 5 team that won an ACC title did not get into the college football playoff. Regardless of whether or not they would have competed to at least have a shot to win a national title. But on that same coin, I think they got it right. I hate to say it. It makes me feel gross saying it. That is the best four teams to actually compete, to draw eyeballs to the event, and four that were pretty dang deserving. So I hate it for Florida State. I think it hurts the sport, but I do think it's the right call.
I can't get there at all. I read a great piece that said that the committee made a decision not based on the games that have happened, but what they think might happen if they do certain things. And that's not football. It's not sports. It's fan fiction. That's what happened. They didn't put Florida State in because they think they might get smoked. And newsflash, a lot of teams have gotten smoked in the playoff, even when they're completely deserving. A lot of teams have gone in as under. People keep saying we don't want another TCU. TCU won a freaking game. Georgia was just better than everyone else last year. There's no one you could have put it. You couldn't have gotten three teams that could have all competed with Georgia last year. It wasn't going to happen. So I think it's really problematic. It's not even like they played nobody. They played a ranked SEC team and a second SEC team in Patrick's Gators, and they dispatched them a little bit, even if it was a little bit ugly. It wasn't even like they were going to be rolling with that third stringer. It was going to be Tate Rodemaker, who would have had a month to prepare. I think it would have been a very different team than what we saw. But Tyler, I'm gonna say something that might surprise you. I actually do think Georgia has a little bit of a gripe here because if the committee, and this is where I think the committee is completely inconsistent. They didn't do they clearly they've dropped all pretense of doing the most deserving. They said they're doing the best, whatever, but they didn't. They half-assed doing the best because there's no way you can slice it that Georgia is not among the four best teams in the country. You can't justify it. So they did some weird. Georgia doesn't deserve to be there because they lost to Alabama, and that's why they're not there. But now we're getting back into deserving. So where's Florida State? It's just like you can go back and forth all day. And I think the clear fact of the matter is the committee did what makes the most sense commercially, and they just used whatever they wanted to justify that. But I'm glad that Texas's head-to-head win got the recognition it deserved. That's the one thing I will say for them. And they did
strongly agree.
I mean, if you want to talk about best versus most deserving, Alabama is the fourth most deserving of the four teams, but they're not the fourth best. They just dropped the best thing when it was time to do seeding because they wanted to put Alabama and Michigan in the Rose Bowl together. So we could talk about that all day, but I don't think they were very consistent. The one thing I'll give them credit for, other than it is going to be an interesting semifinal, but I am happy that Texas got recognition for going 12-1 with, I don't know, I'd say the best regular season win in the country.
What confuses me, though, is why rank Florida State ahead of Georgia if you're going to go off the best teams, right? We're talking about the eye test, and they're clearly judging how the third stringer looked, the fact that they have a backup after Jordan Travis's injury. then Georgia is a better team. Like it makes no sense that FSU's 5 and Georgia's 6. And by the way, I agree that Georgia is probably a top 4 team in terms of talent. And I think honestly they would probably beat Washington. And I don't think it would be close just because of Georgia's defense. But I wanted to get into another comment because I feel like this is sort of leading into this topic. This is from Gary Manny, who says, I hate all the political gamesmanship. This is all about Nick Saban, ESPN, and money. Because a lot of the discourse has been around, well, they're choosing Alabama for ratings, this and that. Kirk Herbstreit's getting a lot of flack because he's been hating on FSU, all this time. Do you guys sort of agree with that? Do you think it is sort of all about, money and ESPN having ties to the SEC and all that?
Did you guys see what the last thing was before they broadcast, before they put the top 4? Like one of the last things you saw right before the final top 4 was an ESPN or an SEC on ESPN 2024 ad. Of course, I mentioned this. This is why Alabama and Michigan are playing in the Rose Bowl. It should be, if these are the 4, it should be Michigan, Washington, Alabama, Texas in that order. But it is just all about putting out the best product. And these semifinals are both super competitive, which I guess is a good thing in a way, but it's definitely about money. And it's why we need a new format. Check out my piece on FanBuzz where we talk about a couple different ways that college football could be handled.
I actually loved that piece. Will has some really out there ideas to change up the college football playoff format beyond just a 12 team, and I really enjoyed that. That being said, we can go into the tinfoil hat conspiracy. We can talk about politicians getting involved in this whole decision, but I do think this is probably Nick Saban's best coaching job in a while at Alabama. I remember vividly us having conversations at the beginning of the year going, this is an inherently flawed Alabama team. This offensive line can't protect. Jalen Milroe is a mess. There's no way they're making a playoff or even winning the SEC. And here we are, 1 loss, SEC champion. They're in the playoff. And I think I'm honestly going to put money on them to beat Michigan. I think Michigan's a good team. I'm sorry, Will, but I'm starting to buy. I think their play style matches really well with what Michigan's trying to do. I think it's going to be a slugfest. I think it's going to be a rock fight. I think it's going to be an extremely competitive semifinal. And again, credit to Nick Saban for absolutely turning the season around. I am floored by how good they look now. And they really did compete in that SEC championship against a phenomenal Georgia team. I get that Bowers and McConkey were not healthy, but just the way they came out and played, I was floored by that.
And that's the thing, Tyler. Like you say that you like them against Michigan, and on paper, I don't think they have what it takes at all. But on paper, they shouldn't even be where they are right now, and they still are.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that I know that we want to be analytical, we want to be concrete when we talk about sports, especially betting, putting money on it. Mm-hmm. But I think we have a very well-coached team that has an incredible amount of momentum and has shown that they can beat good teams. They've showed that they can lose to good teams and compete with very mediocre teams. But this is a Nick Saban find-a-way team. I agree with you. This isn't his best team by a mile, but it's definitely, I think it's the most impressive thing I've seen him do. Yep. I guess not so much if they don't win a national title, because the measuring stick for Nick Saban is national titles, but he's done some really great stuff. He's gotten I'd say everyone on that team is playing the best football that they individually 100%. Could possibly be playing right now, especially Milroe, who I think we'll talk about later.
And speaking of Milroe, we have one more comment. This is from Maddox Crosby 03, who said, the MVP of the SEC championship game is the refs. So clearly doesn't think Milroe was deserving. Look, I'll start here with the ref stuff. I know there was the big 4th and 4 with Isaiah Bond, whether or not, the ground helped him. All I'm going to say is this. When people think that games are rigged or fixed and the refs are in on it, I don't respond to them. Like, I legit will be like, okay, there's no argument to be had here. Like, refs can be bad, good. They can be inconsistent. It's not like they're trying to get one team to win, unless there's some deep, dark secret society, that's at work, that Nick Saban is pulling all the strings. But until then, until something like that is proven, I just think this sort of talk is like not worth it. But maybe you guys have a different take.
I think in the NFL, it's a little scary with teams having official sports betting partners and that kind of thing, and the league having sports betting partners. But in college, and even more so in the NFL, I think it's mostly incompetence. I know Tyler watched Chiefs Packers, and that wasn't bias. That was getting every single call wrong, regardless of who had benefited. Ridiculous late hit on Pat Mahomes. Ridiculous missed DPI on the Packers. Like, it just went round and round we go. Every single call is wrong. I think that a lot of refs are just bad at their job, and it's sometimes the simplest answer is the most correct one. It's not this big sinister thing going on where, excuse me, I don't think that things are getting rigged against a team that's won 29 games in a row and everyone is interested to see if they can do the three-peat. But I definitely think that there were some bad calls, and I think the refs might just be bad at their job every once in a while.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're just flat out bad either. Like, that's an incredibly hard job to do, but we can't expect them to be robots with no emotion that don't make any mistakes. Like,
yeah, not like flagrantly bad, just like incorrect at spots. 100%. I think they're just wrong.
I think that's why that Chiefs-Packers game got so out of hand the other night, is like, you made a bad call and then emotions got to you and you started getting nervous and then you start getting in your own head and then it just collapses. Like, I genuinely thought that was a very well officiated game for 59 minutes. And then that last minute was the worst thing I've ever seen. And like, that can happen. And honestly, outside of 1.5 calls, I kind of get the horse collar looking back on that game. But just it's a really quick moment. They're running no huddle there. It's a 2-minute drill. I can get that, maybe sometimes, 90% of the time you're going to replay that, right, or review it. But just sometimes in the heat of a moment, such a big moment, your brain just kind of breaks. I really can't fault anyone for that. I've made my peace with it. So, and also, again, it's not like Alabama wasn't deserving to win that game.
Right. They're just the better team over Georgia.
Wow. Yeah. The one thing that people have freaked out about from that game that was definitely real is that there were like 16,000 missed holds on Alabama. But that kind of happens every game and every level. Like, I always
until they don't.
Yeah.
Yep.
I always go back to that Super Bowl between the Chiefs and the Niners, where the Niners had like the best pass rush I've ever seen, and the Chiefs didn't get a single hold called the entire game. Like, that's physically impossible. So, as much as I believe that Alabama got away with some open field holds, I think that just kind of happens in football, especially college.
All right. Well, we need to move on from championship weekend and talk about the biggest topic this week, and that's the Heisman Trophy. Specifically, who will win the Heisman Trophy? I think we have 4 candidates: Jayden Daniels, Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Did I miss anyone? Is it just 4?
No, just the 4 finalists.
The Heisman committee missed some people, but you did not.
See, Will is itching to go. So what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna take a person. If you guys want to take a person, that's fine. I'm gonna state my case. The only thing is the argument's going to be over because I have Jayden Daniels. So once I sort of start rhyming off here, it's already game over. He's the favorite to win it. I'm gonna hit you with some facts. I'm gonna start spitting. I wish I could like rap this or something. I don't have anything like that prepared.
You have a poem prepared or something, Patrick?
Yeah, I should have had. So I should have had like a cool format for it. Okay, let me go off. Let me pop off here. So. These are the SEC players that record 50 touchdowns in a season: Bryce Young, Cam Newton, Tim Tebow, Joe Burrow, and now Jayden Daniels. All of those dudes won the Heisman, if I'm not mistaken, right? Jayden Daniels' passer rating, 208, is by far the best in the FBS. The gap from him to Bo Nix is second is bigger than the gap from Nix to Tulane's Michael Pratt in 11th. That was a lot of words. That one maybe didn't hit as much. But let me keep going. Let me keep cooking. Jayden Daniels is tied for the country leading passing touchdowns with Bo Nix, yet he did it in one fewer game. And he has more rushing yards than Michigan's Blake Corum and FSU's Trey Benson. I had to get an FSU guy in there. I had to hate on some FSU. This by far, in a way, is like the easiest choice. This feels like almost like the Joe Burrow year where everyone knew he was going to win it. He is by far and away the best player in the country. Every time he takes the field, what I saw him do against Florida, I don't think I've ever seen that. It wasn't even Johnny Manziel. It was something way better. Every time the dude takes off, he is almost the fastest player on the field. But it's not that he's just a runner. Like, he's legitimately like one of the best passing quarterbacks in college football. It's not even close to me, and that's all I've got. So I don't know if Patrick, you guys have rebuttals.
I definitely like to confirm your suspicion that you've never seen anything like he did against Florida, because you haven't, and no one has. That's the only quarterback game with 350 passing yards and 200 rushing yards in, I can't remember if it's FBS D1 or NCAA history, but definitely at least in FBS history.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was a tremendous performance. I just think the issue with Jayden Daniels is it's the Louisiana Stat Padding University allegations. That team, they're 9-3, I think. They're not a serious contender. Haven't been for a bit, and they can't play defense. So whereas Bo Nix, for instance, Oregon starts running the ball early and often because they're just coasting. LSU's in shootouts, 4 quarters. Joe Burrow wasn't playing fourth quarters, and he threw 60 touchdowns. He also had 3 extra games because they went to the SEC title and the
Right.
Natty. But no, I think Daniels is the best player in the country. I just think that it's not as irrefutable of a case as the numbers would suggest because, I mean, things outside of his control just because of what LSU is this season. I think if they had made that SEC title game like many thought they might, I don't think we'd be having a discussion at all right now. But we can't talk about ifs because I've already talked about how I hate the committee doing that. So based on what did happen, he was on an unserious team, and I think that's a problem for his case, as much as I think he's incredible.
Listen, I know the committee doesn't matter about wins or doesn't care about wins right now, but like I got to care a little bit on the Heisman Trophy race. A 3-loss guy that's not even in the playoff, it is very, very tough to make that Heisman case. That being said, I get his numbers are very, very similar to Joe Burrow's. The production's incredible. I was super duper wrong about this guy at the beginning of the year. I thought he was just a runner. I was proven very wrong. But when you are comparing him to Joe Burrow, there was a national title involved with that guy's run. Like, Daniels is not even in that conversation. I think against some of the better teams, like you're just not seeing that kind of Heisman moment. Like when I think of Jayden Daniels' Heisman moment, I don't think of a really clutch play against a college football playoff caliber team or anything like that. And it's just, to me, that's got to matter. I love the stats. I think the production was incredible. But when I think of the Heisman Trophy, I just think that something else has to matter beyond just the box score.
See, I think if they were to go off that and wins and postseason play, you wouldn't be doing the Heisman Trophy ceremony now. You'd be waiting till January.
Fair. That's totally fair. Yeah.
Which I wouldn't even have a problem with because I think it would be a really awesome story if like Penix won it all. Like, and that should add to his Heisman case. But I mean, if wins matter and losses matter, then was Bo Nix losing that game against Washington? Was that like a dagger to his resume then?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to do my Knicks case, but it just got a lot harder than it would. I think it was going to be Bo if they actually ended up winning. And I don't think he's a tremendous football player. I think he could be a really good slot receiver for the Pats, but I don't think he's going to be a quarterback in the NFL. I think his case took a tremendous hit, but he still had an all-time great efficiency season. Second most efficient offense in the country by EPA. Yes, it's after LSU, but they actually played. Pac-12 is the best conference this season, and he played some tough teams. Played a lot of. I mean, and their games were important. Every single one of those games was meaningful up until the last one. And 4,000 yards passing, 40 touchdowns, 3 interceptions on 77% completion. That's no joke. So I think that the tough thing for Daniels is the team success isn't there, and not even every single number is on his side. So that's what makes it kind of tough because Bo was so statistically impressive too. And you could add caveats, but you can also start adding caveats with Daniels in terms of what LSU was this season. So I think that makes it a little bit tough between them because neither one has the ironclad team component to it now that Bo has lost to the same team twice. And I think that's a tough nail for Heisman to lose to the same guy twice who's also in the Heisman race.
Gentlemen, what are we doing here? I have him. I have the Heisman winner. It's not
always
Jayden
about
Daniels.
Indiana. It's always about Indiana.
It's not Bo Nix. It is Michael Penix Jr., former Indiana Hoosier and current Washington Husky.
Indiana.
Kurt Signetti, future national champion with the Hoosiers. But I want to take the IU stuff out of it. It's an incredible story for Penix. I mean, transferring from IU and then leading the nation in passing 2 straight years. And he has led the nation in passing yards this year with 4,218 yards. I get the touchdown numbers and interception numbers aren't on the same level of Bo Nix and Jayden Daniels. But I mean, 33 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. How many touchdowns did he have on the ground? Give me 1 second. Another 3 on the ground, which is, it's not a lot, but 36 total touchdowns on the year. But it's not the production for me. It's the clutch moments. It's the 13-0 record against an absolutely brutal Pac-12 schedule. It's the fact that they're in the playoff, where we're talking about these other guys who are not in the playoff. And that just has to matter to me. It is an undefeated season for a college football playoff team, and their best player is their quarterback. And I get the argument is, he had a lot of weapons, Polk and Dunze. He's got Fontenot, or however you pronounce his name, on the offensive line. Jalen McMillan was getting healthy, but like Jayden Daniels had Malik Neighbors, and that might be a better wide receiver than any of these guys. I just think undefeated record in the playoff. Sometimes when I think of the Heisman, I think of the best player on the best team, and I wouldn't say Washington's the best team, but they're in that conversation. I think it's an incredible story from all the injuries and the transfer, and just so much has changed in Michael Penix's career from this unknown commodity to now this incredible passing quarterback and one of the most fun offenses you'll watch. So I just think if you're thinking of storylines and narratives, which I do think matter for awards like this, I think it has to be Michael Penix.
I think the weapons caveat is completely disingenuous. I mean, not only his neighbors down at LSU, but Brian Johnson's having an amazing season, and that's just a great offense in general. And everyone talks, I can't stand people calling Joe Burrow the greatest college quarterback of all time, or even the greatest college season, because his wide receiving core would have been not just the best receiving core in college. If that core existed in the NFL, it would be the best receiving core in the NFL now, if not in NFL history, with Jamar Chase and JJ. It's a joke. It's a total joke. And I think as we learned last night with Jake Browning, it's not that hard to succeed with Jamar Chase. But no, I think you make some really great points, Tyler. When you watch the Pac-12 championship, more so than the regular season game between the two teams, I think you know watching drive by drive, Penix versus Bo, it was just not even like watching two guys playing the same sport. Tyler and I were talking during that game, and Penix was just making throws that Bo doesn't even have in his wheelhouse. And when you talk about a system guy, yeah, they both have the benefit of a great system, but at least Penix's system shows that he can put the ball downfield. Bo's system, it gives him all these opportunities in the short field, which is great if you can succeed like that as a team. But Penix's at least shows so much about him as a player. It was big throw after big throw. I think it's hard to ignore what Washington's done this year relative to what the program is on a regular season. And Penix is such a huge part of that. So I would have no issue with him being the Heisman.
So I think
Patrick,
I feel like
did I sway you?
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like now I'm like, okay, well, actually, this makes sense. Maybe Jayden Daniels isn't the Heisman. You know what's interesting, though, in talking about these three guys, they're all transfers. And I feel like in this day and age, like you have the transfer portal, which just opened, yesterday, and over 1,000 players or whatever entered it. It's interesting to sort of see the way people talk about transfers, how kids, when they don't get their way, they want to leave, they want to go somewhere else and play right away. Well, like, are we still going to talk about transfers that way when it works? Like these guys actually go on to be successful and are all in Heisman conversations here. Like, we shouldn't knock people for being transfers. Just like, because don't you want these kids to have the chance to have success and like do all the things that they went to the NCAA to do?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the way the portal has kind of skewed people's opinion of transfers. Let me just go through a really quick recent history of transfer Heismans. And some listeners might not know every one of these guys are transfers because they only made their name at their second university. Mm-hmm. Cam Newton, Florida Gator.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry about that one, Pat. That must be
the laptop scandal, baby.
Yeah. Baker Mayfield, Texas Tech walk-on and Oklahoma walk-on. Kyler Murray, Texas A&M. Joe Burrow, who Ohio State still tries to claim to this day. And of course, it's hard this one's probably not as easy to forget, but Caleb Williams, who no one tried to caveat, is a transfer from Oklahoma, and he came over with Lincoln Riley. Those are some of our most memorable Heismans in recent years. I'd say that Cam season and the Baker season were two, and everyone talks about Burrow. Those are some of the most special seasons in quarterbacking history. So I think it's great for guys to be able to get an opportunity. Maybe you enter a gray area where you see like the JT Daniels is playing for like 5 schools in 7 seasons, but in terms of maybe I committed somewhere that I'm a little bit over my head and I don't have the chance to make the impact I could. Or maybe I've outgrown this place. Like, sorry, Tyler, but I think Penix deserved to be on this Washington team instead of this Indiana team.
Hey, I totally agree. I thought it was absolutely best for him, and I'll root for him for the rest of his career, college and pro. Yep. I just think the way he left was, he didn't make a big stink of it. I know it didn't end on the best of terms, but I just appreciated it and make a big stink of it, and now that he's thriving somewhere else. So I know maybe some other Indiana fans don't feel the same way, but the ones that are self-aware and realize what kind of program Indiana is are absolutely rooting for him wholeheartedly.
All right, there's one finalist that we haven't talked about, and maybe that's for good reason, and that's Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio State. This one feels like the one that doesn't quite belong in terms of numbers, but name recognition, he's right there. Do you guys think he's a finalist because of his name alone? Obviously super talented. He's going to be a top pick in the NFL, but doesn't quite have the same production that others may have.
I know Will is going to go on a tangent about this, but let me just say before he just tears this to shreds, and I don't agree with him being a finalist whatsoever, he is a phenomenally talented player. I am absolutely floored sometimes when I watch that guy. Like 6'4", jaw-dropping catches, can take the top over defense. his quarterback just stunk. His production's okay, but I mean, like, that's not a Heisman caliber season, especially because you're not in the playoff. We have all these arguments against all of these guys that we just talked about, and he checks the boxes on all the arguments we're against. Like, it didn't make any sense to me. It's just brand name, getting the biggest star probably in college football. It's going to be a top pick in that conversation, since you can't get a Caleb Williams in there. But it was stinky to me. I think there were some kids in some smaller schools that had phenomenal years that should have gotten in there, and it really stinks to see.
Yeah, talk about best versus most deserving. I agree with Ty. I mean, Marv's incredible. I think he's one of the reasons they were in that game against us, especially after Will Johnson went down. We had no answer. He's incredible, but you look at what it usually takes for a receiver to be considered for the Heisman. And I know we're not talking, no one even who has him in the top 4 is talking about him winning. But let's just compare him to Devonta Smith really quickly. Marvin's 9th in the country in yards and 36th in catches. When Devonta won, guess what? He was first, and it wasn't close. Devonta had 1,856 yards. Second place was 1,193. Devonta had 117 catches, and second place was 86. He was ahead in touchdowns too, not by as much. He had 23, and second place was 19. But Marv is one of the best players in the country, but to be a receiver Heisman, you really need to be above and beyond in every sort of category. I don't think he was even the most deserving. He's the best receiver probably, but he's not the most deserving. Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, you could argue was almost as important as Penix. Even Troy Franklin on Oregon was phenomenal. Every one of those has him beat, and I think at least 2 out of 3 of yards, touchdowns, and catches. So I could talk about some other positions I think would deserve some recognition, but even just among wideouts, I think there's a few dudes who deserve to be in New York more than Marvin. Not that I think they're going to end up having better outcomes than him in like the NFL and whatnot. He's probably the best football player out of all of them, but that's not how this is supposed to be rewarded. It's supposed to be about what happened, not about what we think could or should happen.
Yeah, I feel like
I think I smell a potential article for Will talking about some Heisman snubs.
I was gonna say, I thought you had like 10 more up your sleeve. I was waiting on all.
Oh, I do. I just don't. I don't know how much time we have.
I could listen to it all day. To be fair,
I can fire some.
I would have been fine if they just did the 3 Heisman finalists. I feel like Marvin Harrison, like, you didn't need a 4th one. Like it was just like, oh, let's throw his name in so Ohio State fans watch it. I don't really understand like why he's even in the conversation. If it looks good because he's not a quarterback, to have a little bit of, differentiation, but it was kind of bizarre just looking at the stats, especially that Will just threw out there. I think that's it for Heisman. So I'm going to take Jayden Daniels. Okay. What do we got?
I want to talk about a couple of snubs, actually. Let's just go real quick.
Go off.
I think Ollie Gordon absolutely unequivocally deserves some attention here. I think it's kind of criminal that he didn't get that finalist spot over Marvin Harrison Jr. I just pulled up those numbers. 1,614 yards and 20 touchdowns while averaging 6.3 yards a carry. I know Oklahoma State only went 9-4, but in like the modern college football game where it's so pass heavy, to see a guy have that kind of production on only 258 carries blows my freaking mind. I thought he was a really fun player to watch. It just stinks that, his season ended the way it did. They got blown out. But if I have to pick a 4th and it's him or Marvin Harrison, I'm taking this dude every time. I mean, I think that's just kind of unfair. And then the one that blew my mind, and I didn't know it until like yesterday, is I looked up Blake Corum. I think you can make the, he's on one of the best teams, the number 1 seed. That man had 24 touchdowns. That doesn't make any sense to me. When I saw that number, I thought it was his career touchdowns. Like, I triple taked it, and then I had to go through the whole box score. I was like, that has to be a typo.
And
yeah,
yet,
Blake. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Pat.
And yet, Jayden Daniels had more rushing yards this season than Blake Corum.
That's the thing. Yeah, we bubble wrapped Blake to start the year because of his ACL, but you saw him getting huge workloads on the road against Penn State, against Ohio State. He has 2+ touchdowns in each of his last 5 games and multiple touchdowns in 9 of 13 games. Also against Iowa, one of the best defenses in the country. Only FBS player to score in every game. Michigan all-time rushing touchdown record for a season and a career. I don't think it should be him, but I think he's done some, like, if we're talking about Marvin just being clearly one of the best without having the stats, I think Blake's clearly one of the best on the best team without the stats. But there's some snubs that I would rather have than him. I think it was a great year for defense. Xavier Watts, who won the Defensive Player of the Year Nagorski Award for Notre Dame, great safety. Cooper DeJean and Will Johnson, great corners. Laiatu Latu, great end. But listen, there's a guy that Tyler might not say because I think he's being a bit too modest. for one time about the Bulldogs. Carson Beck is sweet. He
he
led
is.
one of the best teams in the whole country. And frankly, there's someone who beat him, Jalen Milroe. I can't believe we're saying this, but he was benched, but he wasn't benched long enough to actually hamper his numbers. And the in-season turnaround is staggering. And if we're talking about a Heisman moment, I think everyone here knows what his Heisman moment is. It's the
absolutely.
34th and goal against Auburn. I mean, I don't think he should have won, but I think considering that Alabama might end up winning the Natty at this point, I think that you could put him on that stage, just like you could put Blake Corum.
Yeah, and that's why I think it'd be interesting if they did the Heisman after the entire season, the postseason. Is Jalen Milroe or a Heisman? One number I did want to say in opposition to Ollie Gordon is 34, which is how many yards he had against Texas.
Not good.
The Heisman, I mean, especially when it's a championship game like that, man, if he would have put up like 200 yards, maybe he is the fourth one. Maybe
You're
he
probably
is
right.
back in consideration, but he didn't do anything against Texas. And I think that really sort of hurt any outside chance that he had.
You do have to be your best in the biggest games, and that was kind of my argument for Corum. He had small numbers, but against Penn State, Ohio State, it was the 2 touchdowns and like 100-something yards. So I guess that hurts Ollie.
Yeah.
But I think Tyler's right. He's a great player.
Yeah, and Jayden Daniels has had like 10 Heisman moments this season. So, okay, let's move on. We're going to get to the NFL now. We have our weekly segment where it's Take the Over, the one that I'm really, really bad at if you guys have been following, because I take Iowa way too often. And I'm going to start this one with the Iowa of the NFL, because it couldn't stay away. I'm going to the Patriots-Steelers game. The Patriots feel like Iowa. I feel like the Steelers could also be Iowa because they have great defense and no offense. But the Patriots have scored like 6 points in their last 3 games, so this has to be Iowa. I'm taking it. I think it's 30 points. I'm taking the Patriots and the Steelers. I'm just going to talk myself into it because I picked up Devontae Parker in my Dynasty League, and I need him to pop off. Kenny Pickett, he really stinks. And I think he's hurt, so I think it might be
Mitch Trubisky is going to start. Yep.
This just feels like one of those it's going to be I'm talking to myself. I can't even like do it like without laughing. This one's going to be an offensive, explosive day. Just wait. Just you wait.
As the resident Pats fan, I was waiting to tell Patrick, that if you want to take Iowa, you still can. I'll give you a quick stat on the Pats. We are the first team since the 1938 mighty Chicago Cardinals to hold opponents to 10 points or less in 3 straight games and rack up a whopping 0-3. We have a total of 13 points in those 3 games. It's horrible. You're a sicko for this one too, Patrick. This really is the Iowa. This is the Iowa Minnesota of the NFL.
Yeah. That's a great stat, by the way. Oh my God. All right,
I'm going Colts Bengals over 40.5. The backup quarterback bowl. Gardner Minshew has been balling out. Jake Browning looked pretty decent against the Jaguars. 40.5 is not a big number. My little brother's going to the game. Just the vibe. That's a vibes pick purely.
We're picking off vibes. Also, it feels like every game is a backup bowl now that you got Trevor Lawrence out. I mean, everyone's hurt.
The committee is the NFL playoff committee is saying that the Jags might not be allowed to go to the playoffs now that Trevor's hurt. But no, it's funny you mentioned the backup bowl, Tyler. I didn't even make the connection that it was about to be Minshew versus Browning. The Pac-12 might be dead, but we have the Apple Cup going anyways. That's Wazoo versus UW. But my over, we're going to go with a very traditional under division, the NFC North. We're going to go to Bears and Lions. The Bears offense is trending up with Justin Fields healthy. The O-line has ranked in the top 5 to 10 over the past 6 weeks of most categories as they've gotten healthy. The running game's been good all year. Fields helps the air game a lot. And these teams played to a 31-26 game very recently. I just talked about the Bears offense, but I don't think I need to tell you guys. Lions offense is awesome this season. So I think 42 is a little number for a rivalry game like this that could get really out of hand like the last one did. I don't know who's going to win at Soldier, but I do think there will be points.
All right, nice. I think these are all winners. Hopefully.
Parlay them up. Just put them in a parlay. Let's see what happens.
Just one after another, baby. All right, let's move on to Did You See This? This is from Conference Championship Week. I was actually going to pick – I'll start, I guess. I was going to pick I don't know if you guys saw Quinn Ewers saying this one was for Bevo's cousin. I was going to go with that after the whole thing that happened at that Oklahoma State
that was messed up, yeah.
Which was messed up. I don't even really want to talk about it. But I feel like I can't ignore that Dion lost another soul to the transfer portal. and that is his fiance, Tracy Edmonds. They split after 12 years. First of all, the jokes were insane because everyone's already been lighting him up about the transfer portal. The fact that she also this was probably yesterday, she put this out in a joint statement, basically saying we're moving on just as friends. But the fact that she did it also on Transfer Portal Monday is insane. And for those that don't know who Tracy Edmonds is, she's not some like lady. She is a millionaire. She's an Emmy Award-winning former host of Extra. I only know what Extra was because my mom used to watch it. She's an executive producer who did one of Dion's shows called Dion's Family Playbook on Oprah's network. And she was married to Eddie Murphy for 2 weeks in 2008, which I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, man, thoughts and prayers to Dion. He can't even keep his girl. We'll see if his kids start leaving. Like, I mean, I don't know here. Like, it's brutal for Dion right now.
You just had to talk about Dion. We almost made a whole episode without any Dion Sanders talk.
We can't do it. We just can't do it.
Mine is just going to be that every single quarterback that you've ever known is either going to the NFL or transferring. Just looking at the list of transfer quarterbacks, and I'm just rattling this off the top of my head. Like, I don't even have anything in front of me. We've got Cam Ward. We've got Max Johnson. We've got Tyler Van Dyke. We've got Riley Leonard. We've got Kyle McCord. We got, who was the other big one yesterday? Dylan Gabriel out of Oklahoma. So we've got Ohio State, Oklahoma, Washington State, Duke, Texas A&M. Georgia's 5-star backup is transferring. Alabama's backup quarterback is transferring to go play lacrosse. Like, this is just completely out of hand. We have so many quarterbacks transferring. It's just, this is the new normal. I mean, we just talked about all the list of quarterbacks that transferred and became Heisman Trophy winners, and like, that was just the beginning. I didn't realize how crazy this is going to get. Like, quarterback transfers are truly NFL free agency now. Like, they are literally going to chase the bag. Like, I have sources that have told me directly that Cam Ward was just in Columbus the other day. I literally think that he might be going to Ohio State. I think Sam Hartman's going to Notre Dame. I think I've just heard a couple others that maybe I shouldn't share all these just on a public forum. But I mean, it literally is just bag chasing right now. And honestly, I've been the biggest proponent about college athletes getting paid. This is getting kind of crazy. And hey, you get what you wish for.
Man, I think it might be a little scarier even than Cam Ward for OSU. I think it might be Dante Moore, but I don't want that. But it's funny, Tyler, that you bring this all up, because I was thinking at the beginning of this year, I kept talking so much about QB stability and how rare it is these days. And look who we have in the playoff: JJ McCarthy, second-year starter; Michael Penix, second year at Washington; and Milroe was already in the program, and Quinn Ewers has been at Texas a couple years. OSU was breaking in a new starter, so was Georgia, et cetera, et cetera. And it terrifies me that the only team going into next year with their starting quarterback that they already had is the Bulldogs, because Carson Beck is awesome. So that's scary. But my did you see this? I've got a couple, but a quick one involves Tyler's alma mater. Kurt Signetti just decided to tell everyone that Michigan and Ohio State suck at an Indiana regular season basketball game. Like, Michigan hasn't lost a game in the Big Ten in like 2 seasons, and Indiana's coach is just like, these guys are terrible. So I that's like the attitude I like to take when I was in sports. I would just look across the other side and say,
he's a certified psychopath.
But I'm excited to see. Guy. I hope it's a new rivalry. I'd like to see how it turns out. But he's definitely right that Purdue and OSU suck. My other big one is just, you knew I was going to talk about the Pac-12 championship game. It's my favorite conference, the last game ever. 3 awesome things happened. Well, 3 funny things and awesome things. One was the ref got absolutely drilled by a live pass. That was wild. Go look that up if you haven't seen it. Oregon's first touchdown that got them back in the game when they were down 20-3 was a crazy one-handed tight end catch. And then just when you thought the game was over, they got a long breakaway touchdown too to pull them right back into it again. They didn't end up pulling all the way back, but that made it a real football game once again. So just wanted to give one more nod to the Pac-12 and the madness that was its final game. It really had everything.
All right, guys, that's going to be it for today's episode. If you like the show, please like and subscribe. You can also listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, wherever that may be, Spotify, Apple, I don't really know what else. And don't forget to check out our newsletters. Lots of good stuff in there. The link is in the description. We will see you guys next week. This was a fun one. I enjoyed this. I can't wait to see who wins the Heisman, too.
Michael Penix. Just can't wait. It's going to be great.
Well,
I'm going to build a statue in Bloomington, Indiana if Michael Penix wins.
You can start building it now.
You guys are going to be like the Buckeyes with Joe Burrow, except Penix actually started for you guys. It's a little bit different.
Oh.
No, it's different. You guys, Penix is an actual IU legend. Joe Burrow was an OSU student.
All right, guys, take care. We'll see you guys next week. Appreciate it.
I'm just imagining like Texas and Alabama holding hands, like skipping into the sunset that is the college football playoff, like hand in hand, like best friends.